In this section, we'll start parsing basic JSON. So far, we've handled getting data from our users by reading it from parameters, URL variables, or the headers. But all of these become unwieldy quickly when the number of items grows. For our next step, let's go ahead and make our API able to handle JSON data. I like to put the structs at the top. For this, let's just continue the pattern we've been using up until now of taking a name, which will be a string. Then, let's add it to the mux. And let's put it off of JSON. Hey, Editor Mongoose here. I made a mistake when I was recording this. You need to take the slash off the end of the JSON path here. We'll talk about why that is later, but for now, just take the slash off and you should be okay. And then let's create that function. I like to group functions that are like with like where it makes sense. So here, we'll put this above the handle hello with the rest of the handle funcs. And we'll add our temporary error. And then let's go ahead and write our test. We'll call it test handle JSON. Now in this case, for our request, we can't just give it a nil body. We need to give it an object, specifically one that's been marshaled. So let's create a test object of the user data type. Now that we've created that, we need to marshal it. In this case, this should never fail, but let's make sure that it doesn't by checking the error. And this will be a test fatal error. That means that the test won't continue to run if it encounters an error here. It'll simply fail with this message. Now we need to create a request in the same way that we have before. In this case, because we're sending data, we're going to use the post method. This isn't strictly RESTful because we're not actually creating a resource, but it makes the most sense in most cases like this because Git is not supposed to send data. And for this, we'll put our marshaled request body into a bytes.new buffer. If you look here, new request requires the body to implement IO reader, and this is a simple way to do that. And now we need a test recorder. Much like before, we'll call our handle func directly. And just like before, we'll pass the request in as well. We still expect a status OK here. Then we'll still output a meaningful error. We also need to check the body just like we did before. And let's make the output message the same as well. Note that we've included a space in our test request name, so we need to include one here. And now we're ready to test. If we run, we see that it fails as expected. Let's go ahead and implement this. First, we need to get the byte data out of the body. Let's use read all on the body of the request. If we have an error here for some reason, we do need to do something a little bit different than we have before. First, let's log the error for ourselves. This will show us the detailed error of what went wrong. Next, let's return an error that's a little bit more generic. We don't really need to tell the client exactly what's gone wrong, but it is helpful to give them a clue. And make sure you include a return. Now that we have the bytes, we need to unmarshal them. And if we unmarshal them directly into a struct, it'll be a lot easier for us. So let's declare a struct as a variable. Now we can call JSON unmarshal. We need to give this the byte data and a pointer to the target. Here, we'll error check and do the same thing we did before. Once again, we'll give the user a clue as to what exactly happened, but not the full details. This could possibly expose things about the way our service works that we would rather the user not know. And let's use our helper again to make sure we send the correct message back. Now let's test. Oh no, we still have a failure. This is one of the things that can be really hard to track down. You notice that we got nothing for the username. It wasn't unmarshaled, but there wasn't an error either. Unmarshaling requires reflection. Reflection requires that these fields be exported. This is a very common mistake and something to watch out for. If we do this, and refactor it to be exported, and run our test again, now everything passes as expected. Keep that in mind. Hopefully you're able to see that there's two big oversights here. What if our request body is empty and doesn't actually contain any JSON data? And the other is, what if that name is empty? As a challenge, go ahead and pause the video and write tests to cover both of those cases. Hopefully that wasn't too bad. Let's go ahead and go through these. Because these tests will be very similar to what we've already got here, let's just copy this one. And instead of all this marshalling and setup, we'll just go back to handing it nil. Obviously, we don't expect a status OK. But let's go ahead and run this. And we can examine exactly how it fails. You can see here that we've logged unexpected end of JSON input. And we did get a 400 response code and an error parsing request JSON. But that's not really the error that we want to tell them about. It's actually a bad request body. We'll fix that in a minute, but for now, we know a couple things that we want to change. Let's go ahead and come over here and say that we want it to be a bad request. Let's also come down here and let's have this check for bad request body as a response. Before we go fix this, let's add our other test as well. Once again, this is going to be very similar. So we'll copy this test. We'll delete the name from the test request data. Now, let's think about what we want this to say. This should be a bad request. And if we run this, we can tell what it's going to give us for now. Which is exactly what we saw before. We don't really want this. And because we're dealing with JSON data, let's also assume that we don't want to have a placeholder for this. Instead, let's have this return invalid username provided. We'll pretend that we're looking this up in a database or something. Now, if we run once more, we can see that we're expecting bad request body and not seeing it. And we can see that we're expecting invalid username provided and not seeing it. This one's going to be a little bit trickier, but as a challenge, pause the video now and try to implement this. That might have been a little more tricky, but hopefully you were able to figure some of this out, and if not, don't feel too bad. For this, let's go ahead and validate that this has a length. If the byte data length is less than 1, we can return this bad request body. And if we run our test, you can see that fixes the first one. For the next one, once we've unmarshalled, we can check the name field. And run once more. And everything's passing. Let's go ahead and start our server. And if we bring up our API testing tool and set it to JSON, in the body, we set this to JSON. We're able to send it and get the response we expect. And that'll wrap up this section. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you learned something. If you'd like to support me and help me to create more content like this, check the video description below for ways in which you can do that. You can also just share this video with your friends, and that'll help a lot too. Thank you very much again, and we'll see you in the next one.